one man saying that is fine. If that's your opinion and you're not in it, that's fine. But there is an entire market of millions and millions of people that agree that it is a store of value. So, you can think one thing, but there's also a market, and markets tend to become efficient over time.
We do know that you will always get paid in HEX on a daily basis. And that is truly the miracle that we call HEX, because it is trustless interest, trustless yield. Nothing will stop that contract from running.
We'll do the monster mash. The monster mash. We're going to mash all night. Welcome into the Creed of Crypto live stream, and happy October and spooky season. That is Broke Boy Crypto. I have here with me, as always, Crypto Ewok. And yes, it is now October. We got a lot to talk about tonight, and we're going to answer the question, why is HEX pumping? We got a lot of the crypto market at large asking that question. A lot of people that do not normally follow the PulseChain ecosystem wondering why, and just wondering what is going on here. And you know what we say and what they say, green candles start coming and people start, paying attention to things. So that is kind of what we're seeing here again now. So we'll talk about that. And we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got that. RH with a couple of very interesting tweets over the last week about liquidity bonding within PulseChain. Also a really bullish tweet about PulseX that I'm sure people are really going to dig. Just a lot of things happening right now. We got good HEX staking data coming out, really bullish times. This ecosystem has been pumping over the last week. It's been pumping against USD, pumping against ETH, everything looking good. Bitcoin and ETH down today, and the rest of the market's kind of upset. But here in our silo of PulseChain, things are looking pretty good right now, and we haven't been able to say that for a while, so it's nice. Welcome in, everybody. Checks my pulse audio. Lou, can't see if that's an I or an L. Take a break with Jake back there producing the show. We're gonna have much more of you guys pouring in, so I appreciate you all being here tonight. Ewok, how are you this fine Wednesday evening?
Another good Wednesday. Sentiment is definitely changing. You can feel it. Just the sentiment across the board, people being more helpful, people, it's just everything. There's not as much hatred and just negativity. So it's always nice to see that. I'm glad people are definitely coming around. So things are good.
No, I'm totally with you. Yeah, life's too short to be angry all the time, but I do know it's been a frustrating last 3 years for people within crypto, period, really, not just this ecosystem. But welcome in, Tin Top and Valiant Low Key. Appreciate you guys being here. But yeah, we got a lot to get to tonight, so let's just get right to it. So we do have Bitcoin dipping a little bit today, below 61K now, actually. Ooh, boy. It is funny whenever you're like in a more volatile asset like PulseChain and the things within it, and then you just see like people absolutely going ape shit on Twitter over Bitcoin with a over the last 24 hours, it's not even a 1% drop. But anyway, over the last week or so, about a 4% drop for Bitcoin. It's below 61K. ETH now tumbling down, still looking like dog crap against BTC, but it's gotten a little bit better over the last week. It's at 2350 roughly right now. In recent days, it's really come down. It's 8% down over the last week. And of course, we always talk about Ethereum, and we want to see Ethereum do well, not just PulseChain. If you are in altcoins, which if you're watching this stream, you're probably overwhelming majority in altcoins and looking into DeFi things and things like that. You do want Ethereum to do well. I mean, it's kind of the anchor of Bitcoin's the anchor of crypto, and then Ethereum's the anchor of the altcoins as well. So yeah, what are you seeing right now, Ewok? I mean, we're 2 weeks off. How soon we forget, and narratives and things change so quickly, but we're 2 weeks off from the Fed cutting rates by 50 basis points. They're going to have another meeting right after the election in November, where many are saying that there's going to be another 25 or 50 or God knows what. But we've seen a good reaction in markets. We've seen the S&P 500 make new all-time highs. We've seen PulseChain, more importantly, pumping. We've seen crypto in general mostly pumping since then. So what do you make of what we're seeing with the main market right now and how we've kind of reacted off those rate cuts here?
Well, it does look like the S&P is turning. I know we did make a new high back there on, I guess it was September 30th, But since then, it did take a little bit of a tumble. I mean, not a whole lot, but when you're dropping 50 points or $50 in a day, that's kind of somewhat sizable for the S&P. You have another kind of trying to be a green candle here, but it's not much, just a little bit more, and I think it turns red. So that's turning around. You've got your Ethereum ratio against Bitcoin down to 0.038, 0.039 or so. That's also looking bearish. So the main coins, Bitcoin has fallen pretty substantially in the last even three days. Gone from 66 all the way down to 60. So, you're going to have these corrections as the market adjusts. I think this is something to do, it is playing off of that decrease in interest rates. Short term, it wasn't. I think the 25 points were baked in. I don't think the 50 were. So I think this is kind of the natural reaction that you're seeing now, where things finally even out a little bit. I think it'll bottom off of this, this moving average probably, which it somewhat did and started to bounce. So I don't look for too big of a pullback here in the Bitcoin market. And, when Bitcoin drops, Ethereum, because it's tied so heavily to the liquidity, it does as well. So that's kind of what we're seeing when one falls, most of them do as well. So I think that's the story of the market right now. But all in all, we talk about it fairly often. When you see a nice run up, you do get those little pullbacks. You can put the Fibonacci's on, and it usually almost always stops with a level at some point. And I didn't turn it on either way. But that's usually how they work out. It'll run up and then it'll pull back at the 0.6, 0.68 or whatever it is level and retest that and then take off again. So these aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a slight market correction, I believe.
I think so too, and it's just another reminder that what are you playing for? We can talk about it. It does still suck where ETH is at right now. People are dunking on ETH left and right, blah blah blah. And I think that this ratio is likely going to be the low where we've kind of hung out at here. But it's what are you playing for? It still is October 2024. We still are talking about ever since anybody that's had knowledge of a Bitcoin 4-year cycle and had a general idea of it. You at the very, very least are playing at least until midway through next year. If not late next year, if not, we're seeing increased talk because so many people think the regular exact 4-year cycle is going to happen. We are seeing increased talk of what Axis Alive has talked about on here a lot. I've been seeing Sami post about it more and more because there's so many, the overwhelming consensus now is okay, same thing as always, 2025, blow off top, late year, whatever. More and more, it's well, what if it doesn't? What if it's ranging in 70 to 100, 100 all year long? We don't get over 200K BTC or something like that. And we do just have people get flushed out in 2025 at some point. People take profits, think it's over. And then 2026, we just get this God smack ending, which would be freaking, it'd be optimal. It would literally be the best thing ever. Yeah, maybe you'd have to wait a little bit more, but it's been pretty bad the last 3 years. I think you can make it another few months into 2026 if that is what happens. It would throw a lot of people off guard. But I'm intrigued by that idea. And again, we're at the point where everybody thinks the normal 4-year cycle is just repeating here. And, I understand why they are. But remember earlier this year, we had Bitcoin pumping all through the first half of this year. And everyone was oh, left translated cycle. Everybody's totally ditched that idea now, of course. So, yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the time frame. Yeah,
it is October. October is historically very bullish. So, and remember, it's only the second. So, for monthly candles, especially even in the HEX PulseChain ecosystem, which we can kind of switch over to now, probably.
No, I'm just kidding. Go
ahead. We've seen 6-7 months of down erased in 20 days. So, historically, October is usually a good month. So, we've got that to look forward to, and it is the same. The cycle is the same until it isn't. We've got to prove that it's not before, all these great ideas of a different type of cycle, a delayed cycle. Now we do have the whole country's economical issues and all that good stuff to kind of figure in, but again, I haven't seen much difference. We're still on the same pattern as before. It's a little different, but it rhymes, right? It's very close to what it has been historically. So it should be a good month. It is October, and we'll have to see how October plays out for us.
Well, I'm glad you did just say that, because it will be interesting to see how October behaves, because September, I mean, as markets usually do, everybody had it so baked into their minds. It's like, oh, September's always red. It's one of the worst months in, Bitcoin's history and everything. And we had a green month, actually. And I think it was, kind of a byproduct of August just being absolutely abhorrent. I mean, like the beginning of August, we just had that like terrible, terrible dip that one weekend, in all world markets. But yeah, September was really green for crypto, obviously, the whole way through. And then I think that's partially why we probably saw this sell-off too. Like, forget about, I know everybody's going to assign, war, this, that, the other thing to it and everything, and that's fine. But we just flipped over to a new month. I mean, a lot of times, like on the closing of a week or a closing of a month or a flip over like that, you will see volatility. Like that does happen from time to time. So, and again, like you said, we're 2 days in, so we'll see how October goes. But
exactly.
Looking at PulseChain, beautiful what you just said. 20 days, months and months of horrible price performance that people are bitching at each other, upset, horrible mood, just terrible, terrible sentiment erased within a couple of weeks. And it's insane that this happens in crypto. We say it all the time. People say it all the time. And unless you've experienced it before, you just don't buy it. You don't believe it's going to happen. And hey, we're not out of the woods. I mean, the prices of this ecosystem are still decimated. I'm not acting like that. I'm sure nobody's celebrating like, oh, okay, hey, I'm good now. But it shows you how quick this stuff can turn on a dime. So PulseChain prices right now, we are looking at Pulse a little bit over, I'm trying to get away from even saying SAC rate anymore, but a little bit over 50% of the SAC rate at 4 zeros and a 534. PulseX 4 zeros, 315. We have incentive token up at 273. HEX, which, man, the hexes have just been like in fuego here over the last couple of weeks. So HEX is at 1.4 cents right now on its own. We were just talking about 1 penny combined HEX and celebrating it within the last week. I think it was last week or like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and EHEX at 003 almost here, 0029. So, everything has been up. Once it goes, it goes. I mean, you just see how quickly this happens. We were sitting there at those bottom ranges. There were many people, and look, I'm not going to say they couldn't come back. I don't think they will. There's no way to know for sure, but there were plenty of people like on Twitter and stuff saying, I mean, on our own channel, sell all the PulseChain core ecosystem tokens right now and buy them back 50% cheaper, because I'm telling you, it's just like, dude, you do not want to be like, forget about whether you end up being right or wrong in a bull market. To do some kind of short-term bet like that is just absolutely a stupid move. It's like shorting a bull market. I mean, when you're in bullish times, it's just not a good idea to do that, especially for people who are already long-term focused. They're looking to be here into 2025. It's just like horrible, horrible advice. And I'm sure that person didn't actually do any of those things on their own. But anyway.
So very few people make that right call as as things are falling. If you wait too long and try and pull one of those moves because you're like, crap, I should have sold back at whatever it was, it starts eating at you, and you try to make that play, and then it turns around on you, and you get left behind. And that's why, that whole saying of people selling bottoms actually happens. They don't always do it intentionally. They think they're going to sell and buy back in if it does dip again, but it doesn't. They could be the last of the exhausted, sellers. And there just aren't many more left because they've been sitting there looking at it for so long. And it's eating them up that they try to make a play to double their bag even, and they don't make it. They miss it, and it runs away from them. I believe that too. Sellers are exhausted. They have been, just not the time to make that type of play. So kudos to those who hung in there.
Hex Monkey, I think you hit the nail on the head, and usually monkeys do that. So I appreciate that, and I want to get to that. So usually we'll like look at the charts and get way into the charts. I don't want to do that right now for a moment because I want to talk about like what people are saying and the people, like I said at the beginning of the show, um, more people not within this ecosystem already are noticing this ecosystem pumping and are wondering why. And I think this is a great time. I want to use this as a vehicle. It got some engagement from a lot of the community the other day because this guy also, I think KDP and Sami both commented on him. I'm sure probably guys like Crypto Coffee did too. Maybe I just didn't see it. But if you can pull up that Dagnum PI tweet that I sent you, not to necessarily highlight him, it's just that this is a great example of this conversation right now and what you just said, Hex Monkey, about sellers being exhausted. So this guy, and again, I'm not making any judgments on I like Sami's video right down there. I'm not making any judgments on him. He seems like a fine guy to me. He has at least tens of thousands of followers. I forget how many, but he's been continuously asking. So he's seeing Hex pump, and he's probably first started looking at the EHEX chart, and he's like, this thing has looked totally dead. Why is this suddenly pumping? What's going on? And he's asking, why is it pumping again? And we can look at maybe I'll just actually look at his exact tweet that you have up there. Let me pull this up big so I can actually read it. Hex has a call community, but so does ADA. So this doesn't explain the recent pump. Now, this is already like 2 of his tweets in. He started out by asking, like, why is it pumping? Why the sudden demand? All these things, like trying to make logic of it. Like what happened? What's the concrete thing that happened? Which I think people so often try to do in markets. Like we were talking about BTC price earlier. Like, oh, it's the war and all these things. So yeah, Ewok kind of showing that's how it started.
Yeah, here's his first tweet. I'll just start there and we'll kind of go.
So Hex community, I'm genuinely curious on what is going on. With close to 20,000 different networks, it's impossible to keep track. With the open network TON, it's easy to understand what was causing the TON pump, which accounts are best for data. So it's cool that he's curious. I mean, he's looking into it and like, why is it happening and stuff like that. And, TON's one of those coins that I don't know everything about it, but I'm sure it's likely been VC backed and stuff like that. And what's happening behind the curtains there a little bit, but Hexo replied, you look like you've been in crypto a while. Sometimes there isn't. Yeah, exactly. There isn't a definite reason why it's pumping. It pumps and creates FOMO and gets more people to buy. I hate to say that it's just as simple as this, but it is. I mean, like, the timing of cycles, exactly what Hex Monkey said a moment ago, sellers being exhausted. We've been dead for 3 goddamn years. What more do you expect? You know what I mean? Like, we just reached like all-time lows for the second time within a year. It just ends at some point. And maybe it doesn't always go up like in a straight line or like V bounce off or something like that. We have been rounding. But yeah, it's gone up kind of hardcore. If you what did KDP say? She said PulseChain and HEX have all the fundamentals. At the end of the day, she talks about community, and he's like, well, I get it, but these have communities too, and blah, blah, blah. Sami tweeted something to him as well. Oh, they told him, watch some of Sami's videos and you'll understand or whatever. If you go back up to what you did at the very first tab up, just wherever you started, just go the whole way up to the top, just whatever the original was. Yeah, here we go. So, okay, no, the other one. No, go back. It was the very first thing you had up when you started. Yeah, here we go. Scroll up. There you go. Yeah, he says if it can flip current resistance into support that it could fly. He understands about the price. Community said look into Sami. Still looking where this is what he can't get out of his head. And I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying, like, people keep trying to assign logic, and this is not unique to PulseChain. This is like to markets, I think. But community or where's the sudden demand for HEX coming from? I do agree that this year and next will be pivotal. Not the dump projects, 25, 26. I don't know what he's saying here. 25, 26, both Solana and Ethereum will most likely be removed from the top 10. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see that either. I don't see Ethereum
Solana
losing. Maybe Solana.
Yeah.
Solana is one of those networks where if they continue to have issues where the network goes down and people finally see it for what it is, it could have some problems and people could kind of shy away from it. Again, we're getting back into that educational part of DeFi, and it's not DeFi. It's not DeFi at all if they can just turn it off and on at a whim if there's a problem. So a lot of people don't know that about Solana, and it's kind of up to us to educate them and tell them that, do you really want to be on a network that can just flip a switch? It's not really trustless when that can happen. So yeah, this guy's got, I just looked, he's got 24.1 thousand followers. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he does have a big voice, and it's good to see the interactions like Hexo and Katie and Sami and all these guys giving him the reasons. But exactly like you said, there isn't one. It's just, there has been so much FUD for 3 years, and the community is still so strong. We haven't gotten shaken out. And I think, a testament to that is how many people are here for 15 years that, that's what it goes to. It's not just a matter of owning coins, because we own coins, but we're locked in those coins, and we're not going anywhere if we want to. So, that has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, I just my main focus was just that's why, again, Hex Monkey, you make a great point. Sellers are just exhausted. Sometimes markets start to go up, and that's why this ecosystem is going up. We've just been down here for so long. There doesn't need to be some story, but it is good that we are seeing people on Twitter start to react to that and wonder what's going on. And he's not the only one. There's been other people tweeting about it, people checking in on Hex and stuff because they see the price going up. So maybe he just needs, I don't know, the realization that, like, with not everything needs to have some kind of narrative that goes along with it. You know what I mean? So
right.
That's that tweet anyway. As far as the prices and some other aspects of it, and again, maybe we'll just kind of skip looking at the actual chart this week, even though it's beautiful. But let's talk about this, because you sent me another. This kind of all coincides with what is going on with the price right now. People forget, that when they talk about the treasury fund for PulseChain and the other things that are out there, people talk a lot about there's a wallet with sacrifice funds from the PulseChain sacrifice. It has 170,000 ETH in it, that is apparently down this much right now. It was bought at $3,900, blah, 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 whatever. But people know that there is kind of a treasury out there with that much ETH in it. But also, I think people underrate that there are other whales and interested parties that there is a lot more money than that to go around. Now, we've talked about the 170K ETH that would be at $10,000 ETH, almost $2 billion. At $12,000 ETH, it's over $2 billion. At 7,000 ETH, it's at over $1 billion. So, I mean, even a horrible cycle top from ETH, that wallet would have $1 billion at least. So, I mean, that's what we'd be looking at. That you figure, you don't know. I mean, you don't know what could happen with those funds, but we do know that it's an interested party that likes to buy these coins, and at that price, would be interesting if they did. But we also know that there's other whales out there that are interested in it. And if you could pull up that tweet that you sent me the other night, from AA Almighty or Almighty 5555, talking about. Oh, my bad. I don't have you on. Okay, so this is very interesting. We don't obviously know any of this. We don't know if this is true or anything like that. But my main point is that just because a wallet that people have tracked has 170,000 ETH in it, people think well, it'd be cool if those funds made it in. We don't know when, how, or why they would make it in, but at least that's out there. Well, that may not be all that's out there. There may be actually a hell of a lot more where that came from that people may not recognize. So this guy says, and I gave him a follow, I wasn't aware of him. I see you've just been very rude and haven't followed him, so you should probably go. There you go. Thank you. So he says, PulseChain needs to understand this. Screw this site. I'll say it's a psyop. It's to look into rh.com. I don't know that I'll read every single line, but do you all really think Richie made this post for no reason? Now, the post that he's referencing, if you go down, so people know what this is about, go down to where he's quote tweeting. So yeah, there's Richard's tweet from March the 7th of this year, which things were pumping big time at that time, if you don't remember. But he said, Ethereum, like if you've ever sold a top instead of buying it. Now, we know that a wallet with sacrifice funds did buy ETH around the price of 3,900. So go ahead and scroll back up. It's interesting that Richard did tweet that. But this guy goes on to say, do you all think he looked at $800 Ethereum in the face and didn't buy it with his own funds? That was back in the bear market. If you're new here, November 2022, we had ETH pretty much at those prices. It was terrible. Everybody was calling for $500, $600. That never happened. Then he used the sacrifice wallet, and who is that? Justin. as exit
Yeah.
liquidity to make the top and collect profits in another wallet so that everyone thinks that he's down and FUDs. But in reality, he's up more than we can even fathom and was able to scoop Ethereum dip again after dumping the top. And now he's going to ride it up again. This is one of the greatest players in cryptocurrency history, meaning RH. This is layer one launch cycle PulseChain where the stock market swallows ETH and BTC. You think he's going to mess this cycle up with the amount of money that he has at his disposal? You don't think some of this was planned? And then he goes on to say, like, yeah, I'm sure many things happened that he didn't expect. Nobody's perfect or anything like that. But essentially what this guy is saying is that, do you think that even with his, own personal money or whoever it may be, that Ethereum wouldn't be invested in at that low prices before? And just the things that people like to be, chain sleuths and stuff like that and think they know everything that's going on, and they look at sacrifice wallets and stuff like that. It doesn't mean just because that's what people have seen that that's all there is out there, I guess is what the post is here. So I know we're not like wallet trackers. We're not like on-chain guys. We're not like, spying on wallets, hoping somebody else pumps our bags for us and stuff like that. But it is interesting that, I think people just forget, like, there could be a lot more going on here, essentially. So, yeah. What do you make?
Yeah, I agree. To your point, we aren't wallet trackers. I could care less, really. I mean, I see it on Twitter when people post about it, and the SAC wallet made this move or that move. But we all know that there's other wallets out there. There's ones we don't even know about. They're hidden. They probably have no ties or affiliations to him whatsoever, so they can't be tracked back. They're just wallets that are out there. And yeah, he's always been known to be a top and bottom caller. He knows the cycles very, very well. So yeah, I believe there's a lot more money than we even see in those wallets. And to think that he potentially bought the bottom at 800 or whatever it was is quite likely. So there's also speculation of him having a lot of Bitcoin that was probably not cashed in, but free claimed when HEX launched. So I don't know if you remember or not, there was something called a silly whale penalty, where if you had over 1,000 Bitcoin in a wallet, you got penalized. You got less HEX for claiming unless you broke it down. So there were a lot of wallets that had 999 in them, which were interesting. So how many of those were his? And what, you and I have talked about this, off air and behind the scenes, but, there's a lot more money that's out there. I would guess, no, I'm not even going to guess. It's millions. It's probably hundreds of millions of other funds that are out there playing around that people just don't know about. So yeah, I thought this was quite interesting, the theory behind it, and how he bought the 800, sold the top at the 35, and then rotated into the other wallets that people do know about as a potential gameplay to make people think that he didn't know what he was doing. It was kind of one of those things to just shake people out, possibly. So, he's always been a 5D chess player. So would that not be a hell of a move, right? To make people think that he's down so badly with other people's funds, and that's really not the case. And it's not other people's funds. I shouldn't have even said it that way, because that's not true. It's not anybody else's funds. It belongs to the OA. So that was a bad way to put it. Oh,
no, I understand. What
we got a super chat. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, but it is very interesting, and I just think that it's odd that people like assume that they know exactly the ammo that the OA or a sacrifice wallet or any wallet really has, without knowing anything else they may have, or forgetting about what else could be out there. Like I think it's all reasons to be like even more bullish on this maybe than we've ever expected, because there's a lot out there, And who knows? Even right now, I mean, like some people have been speculating now. Again, like with that guy on Twitter asking about like why the sudden pump and definitely seller exhaustion. But sometimes too, I mean, we're seeing every day, like on the alerts, like of the bridge and stuff like that, you're seeing 6-figure clips, just boom, 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 boom all day, bridging into PulseChain. So, I mean, there could be big buyers out there that are like, hey, I've been sitting on the sidelines. I want to have some kind of confirmation. And with this recent pump, and like Hexo said in that reply, the prices start going up. Look, think of all the things that recently happened. We just had a double bottom a year after the first bottom. We just had the rate cuts. Like, people are getting clarity on what's going on with things. We have the election coming. Like, it's put up or shut up time, like across the board in crypto, not just in this ecosystem, but it's kind of like, we need people probably out there. And I totally get this. I mean, like, if you're somebody kind of flying by the seat of your pants and isn't to where you want to be at all, you've been just DCing like a goddamn madman for months and years and all that stuff. I totally understand. But in terms of bigger buyers that are like, hey, like, I have money, I don't want to, I don't need as much risk or whatever, they'll wait for a confirmation. And, here you see that happening, and you're seeing all these big inflows right now. So yeah, I think it's going to continue. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing right now. So
I agree.
Cool. Well, yeah, it's really nice to see things turn around. Pulse looking good. But if you guys want to check out the Pulse ETH chart, it is looking amazing right now. PulseX, of course, still looking really good against Pulse and everything. That ratio continues to be strong. So, yeah, we're looking really good across the board. Both HEX is dominating. So we're going to get to some interesting info about HEX here in a couple minutes here, too. So if you guys are enjoying the stream so far, do us a favor, smash the like. We appreciate you being here. We do this show every Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you for being here. Pulse Life, Duke, once again, appreciate you, man. Yellowtail, Acid Thunder, Pete Crypto, welcome in, guys. Yeah, hit us up in the chat if you have any comments, questions, or anything about the ecosystem. Let's move on to this. So Richard, speaking of, I know we talk about him a lot tonight, but he's had some amazing tweets here over the last couple of weeks. And I think we should, or last week, I should say, we should start out with this liquidity bonding within PulseChain, I think. If you could find that one, Ewok, and how Pulse and HEX are tied together. One, of course, will make the whole ecosystem rise. And this one was, I think, kind of a weighty tweet, yeah. But let's get into it a little bit. I'll do my best to kind of TLDR it, like on AI or something like that. And then we could discuss it, because I think he's really, like, this is really important. Like a lot of his tweets, we always talk about how you feel like you have to decode them a little bit, like Pink Floyd song lyrics or something. I think that's what we have a little bit with this one. So people speak with certainty about things they don't understand. Richard Hart educates you today. HEX is primarily paired with Pulse. If people buy Pulse to buy HEX, it drives up the price of Pulse and HEX versus the dollar at the same time. It's reflexive. AMM example people are used. $1 of DAI and one of HEX in a PulseX pair. Someone pays $1 DAI, $1 of DAI, and gets 0.5 HEX. Now the HEX price is $4. Example, Richard Hart teaches you $1 of DAI and one Pulse in a pair, one HEX and one Pulse in a pair. HEX is $1 because it trades for one with Pulse, and Pulse is $1 in this example. Someone pays $1 of DAI to get half a Pulse. Now the price of Pulse is $4. Then they pay the 0.5 Pulse. They got to buy HEX from the HEX Pulse pair. This moves the price of HEX up 2.25x versus Pulse. Price moves as a square in PulseX pairs, because that's how X times Y equals K. Automated market maker systems work. Since you added 50% to the Pulse and the HEX Pulse pair, 1.5x times 1.5x equals 2.25x. So now your $1 of DAI moved Pulse up 4x, and HEX versus Pulse is up 2.25x. So now a HEX is 4x times 2.25x equals 9x higher price. That's how reflexive systems work. You moved a thing up, and a thing up, and moved another thing up as well. These are estimates. You have to stick to the real numbers in there, and there's pairs to stables which aren't as reflexive. So TLDR, people are underestimating price moves because they're not counting for reflexivity in things that are paired with other things that are paired with stables. Rough examples here. This is not advice of any kind. Do your own research. So this is really interesting. And obviously we know, like, the liquidity, like, everything's going to kind of tend to rise together, but talk about the reflexivity that he's talking about here, because I do think that that's something that we take for granted. Maybe people don't recognize, and might be responsible for, like, how we're seeing some of these prices, especially with HEX recently, just fly, which I think is probably why we got this tweet at that time. But yeah, what do you make of this?
Well, yeah. So one of the things I always think of when people are talking about this type of thing, they don't understand how liquidity works. Johnny Chaos has a good video out there with jars and marbles in the jar, and it talks about what happens when you add or remove what things become. And I don't think people understand that it's not just a 1-to-1 or something's going to go up. There's always that multiple, because the x times y equals k formula, especially with these uh, automatic market makers like the Uniswaps and the PulseXs and the things like that. Um, this does not have anything to do with single-sided liquidity. That's another thing that's not talked about here, is how that kind of screws up this formula. But to his point, is when major pairs are tied like that, if there's a large influx to Pulse to then buy Hex, you've done crazy things with just that, with those two buys to the whole ecosystem. So, we always say that the rising tide lifts all boats, but in this sense, it's even multiplied, right? Because of those bonded liquidity pairs. Now you see all these people creating these other things out there. They're products that, they tie them to these other tokens for that reason, right? They want their tokens to do well, and when people buy them, it can reflexively help out the other tokens. I'm not sure still how I feel about those.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for the different things, and it's great to see people doing it, but sticking with the bonded pairs in this particular instance, it can really multiply, and it doesn't take as much to pump things as people would like to believe. It's one of the reasons why EHEX can pump that much harder, and we've seen it do some crazy things. And sometimes people make fun of us for saying that it can reach parity, but it would take a lot less money to have that done. Now, a sell can also hurt as well. So, that is the opposite side of all of this, is when you do have smaller amounts of liquidity, the sells will torch the price just as easy as buys jack it up. So that is something that you have to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, Richard has always been super educational, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people miss his streams, because he does teach these things that most people don't understand. I don't know if you remember some of these streams when he had some haters on there and he was explaining some of these concepts to them who they claimed to be market makers and things like that, but they didn't understand the automatic market maker situations with like Uniswap, for example, at that point. And I think people learn a lot from him. So yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. But yeah, the TLDR of it is, one buy to go into one coin can really increase a lot of things all around it. So it's pretty neat. He doesn't even bring up PulseX. And that's a whole other system in itself because of the buy and burn. You're not even figuring that in when you do trade on there. It affects that too. So yeah, these things are all tied together. So I think they did it in such a way that when things run, they're really going to run. And we're kind of seeing that now, as the sellers have gotten exhausted. Some smaller buys, some people coming in with smaller things are definitely increasing everything. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad he went out of the way to kind of explain this. And we are seeing it like in this pump over the last week or two. We are definitely seeing it across the board. And it's interesting that you do bring up PulseX and the fact that he didn't bring it up, because he did in a subsequent tweet get into the power of PulseX actually. So I don't know if he purposely saved it for that reason, but that's a perfect segue for us to head over and check out Richard Hart's tweet about PulseX. So we'll do that next here. And, I just want to a little quick preamble about PulseX. I mean, it's so interesting, like what has happened with this since the launch of Pulse. Well, before the launch of PulseChain. So, I mean, if you've been here for whatever 2, 3 years at this point, You remember a lot of the narratives about PulseX before Pulse actually launched, about like the buy and burn. Like the product is the product. The product hasn't changed, and it is, pretty much as advertised. But the buy and burn built into it was the main thing, and people talking about like, oh, it can do a 10,000x, and it can do this, and mathematically, if the buy and burn gets to this number and stuff like that. We just crossed 5% of the tokens of PulseX being burnt permanently, so that is awesome. We just got to there after this thing's been around for almost a year and a half. But there was such a huge narrative about PulseX. Well, also because they're, first off, the prices that people could sacrifice for PulseX tokens were still good, that you could sacrifice for it, and more people were able to get in on the sacrifice. Way more people sacrifice tokens for PulseX, so about 3 times as many, which we've covered many, many times. So the price of PulseX was just absolute dirt garbage out of the gate. It's the ratio against Pulse. I mean, we don't have to bring up the chart. We've done it many times. We mentioned it earlier in the show, but it's straight up and to the right against Pulse, basically. But I mean, I remember it being consistently for a while like a 1-to-4 ratio. I mean, we've been under 1-to-2 now for a while. So I mean, it is just absolutely ripped. And it would be such an arc. We've talked about it with Frank Molina many times, for PulseX to have this, like, all this crazy build up. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's obsessing over it before the launch of PulseChain. Then it falls flat on its face. It's the redheaded stepchild. Everybody's shitting all over it. Like, what do you mean there's not single-sided staking? I thought there was going to be this and that and all these things. And, after all this bearishness, we see that its ratio starts to close. It's burning all these tokens. And in the end, it might just reign supreme that, like, the product is still the product and it's still going to do very well, which would be a very interesting arc for it overall. So all that to just say, we'll take a look at his tweet. So GoPulse.com shows that over 1 trillion PulseX have been burned. There's just not that much PulseX available for sale on PulseX. That's not even 2 trillion total across all the pairs. Even if you had 100 million of DAI, you'll only get 0.3 trillion PulseX. You could split the DAI on the ETH side into ETH, USDT, USDC to get more Pulse more efficiently to swap for PulseX, or for Ink to PulseX. Auto Router already does that, and you'll get more, but still there's just not much PulseX for sale in the AMM compared to how much is shown burnt. Remember that PulseX, the prices move as a square function. So every time you double one side of a pair, you have the other side, making a 4x price move. So if you want to reduce the PulseX available in the AMM by 10x, then you have to 10x the other side as well. And that in isolation would be a 100x price move. Not advice, to your own research. Anyway, most of the liquidity in a well-functioning market isn't sitting in an order book usually. For instance, what percentage of total houses are for sale at any given moment? And what percentage of total money is sitting in bids? Math is fun. TLDR, I'm surprised how much the buy and burn function people execute is eating up PulseX supply. So he's obviously pleasantly surprised with how many of these tokens have already been burned. The lack that's actually for sale. I mean, we just ticked up over 5%. And yeah, the thing has been working flawlessly. And this has all been, in times of very low activity on the chain, compared to where I think we're about to start going here. So, obviously we have lots of meme trading and all kinds of stuff over the last year and people buying the tokens. But yeah, what do you make of this? And I think it's very bullish for PulseX.
Well, yeah, it's very bullish. So I just pulled it up. It's actually, where is it here? 1 billion or 1 trillion, 12 billion, 101 million, which comes to only, like, if you're comparing it to the price, it's $31 million of PulseX. However, what he says about the available, what's for sale, it is so little that you would jack the price up, and people just don't understand that. They come out and they say, well, market cap this or market cap that. It's still so very irrelevant with what people just don't understand. You have to look at what's for sale, what sits on the order books, what sits in the automatic market makers, what's there, and how much would a buy actually jack the price up? And people just don't understand that. So a lot of these things, when we were talking last week about the price predictions for Pulse, and someone said that we were estimating too low, even at 450 or 600.
They were saying that I was not bullish enough. They were okay with you. But yeah,
I
maybe.
think the guy even said it could go 1000x because my 600x was too low. So it really can. And market cap doesn't matter. The problem is we still have a lot of people that have a lot of this. And we have talked about that with Frank before. How when the PulseChain sacrifice happened, there were very few in the know, right? But once that became popular and people missed out on it, and then several months later when PulseX happened, there were that many more people in the network, and probably 3 times as many people got in on that one. So, it is a heavy coin. However, you still have to look at how much of it's for sale, how much of this is going to get burned. I mean, just a year we burned 1 trillion of the supply. That's crazy. What happens in 5 years when there's that much more just gone forever? Going to be interesting to see how it plays out, especially with if they do introduce single-sided staking. Well, I don't think you're going to get PulseX for that. You'll probably get incentive token or something else as a reward, because PulseX is completely deflationary, right? So after 5 years, like I said, if that many of these things get burned, at that point, it's just going to crazy increase the price. It's taking a while now, but I think down the road, long term, people could see some pretty interesting price action on this. So yeah, it's pretty neat to sit there and watch, not sit there and watch it, but I check in on it occasionally to see how close we've gotten. And then once it passed that trillion, it was, it's just, to me, it's a crazy amount of coins that we'll just never see again, that aren't ever going to be available. And it's definitely going to help the price out.
And for it to already be 5%, I mean, that's like a whopping amount.
I know.
To already be gone. I mean, and again, in these times, I mean, like, yeah, maybe we're halfway through the bull market or whatever in terms of time, but I mean, in terms of like, we haven't had that asymmetric upside or anywhere near that yet. So, yeah, you figure there's going to be a lot more volume coming and things like that. So it's just going to get crazy. And to your point too, like you were talking about, like if and when single-sided or however kind of staking would come, the developers and everything have been very strategic in the deployment of anything new on PulseX. And we've seen in the last few weeks probably the most rollouts that we've ever seen on PulseX. Even that stuff outside of the stable pools, which is tremendously bullish. But even that stuff has been just kind of like,
whatever.
Nothing crazy, like nothing that's going to make you, just head over heels. But the stable pools are definitely huge. I mean, it's good for like bulls coming into the whales and stuff coming into the ecosystem. And of course, if you later on, like maybe in the bull market, if you're selling or whatever, to throw all your stables in a pool and earn yield on that, that's terrific, obviously, and a huge addition. I'm very happy about that. But it's just been like, okay, it's way faster, which I can verify. I was just telling you, I just was on it making some moves the other day. PulseX is extremely faster. Things, transactions going through way more quickly, looks way sleeker. They have photos or icons for all the tokens that are on there. You don't have to import all these tokens. It's all that's good. But I think we're nowhere near what's going to come in terms of upgrades to it, in addition. So
yeah, I don't either. I think there's more to come. And I think as we get into this bull market, they will definitely add them, which just increases the want and the need to be a part of the ecosystem as things get better and better and better. We've talked about it all the time. He's a chess player. He's very strategic. He knows what he's doing. And I think people underestimate these small little moves to possibly shake the people that don't belong here out, and put things in at the right time when it really matters, and that's going to play a huge part in the success of this whole chain, this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. Super bullish. And good stuff. We're going to move on to some HEX related stuff here now. But shout out the chat. Tommy Barnedas, Pookie Doo. I love you. Arrow Point. Appreciate you guys being here tonight. This is an active chat. We got a decent amount of people here. I think we got like 85 on YouTube, 50 more so on Twitter watching. So I appreciate all of you guys being here. I think the numbers are going to start to go up because, green candles. And I've heard other
Yep.
kind of PulseChain content creators saying the same thing. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. And I will say this, just like on a personal note, like for us, and I think a lot of other people that have kind of been here the whole time, and even far before us, people in the early days of HEX, I mean, to, consistently be here in the shittiest of moments, it feels so much better in moments like this. And again, we're nowhere near anything. I mean, we just ticked up a little bit. It just feels good to be kind of out of the woods from the lows.
Yeah.
But when you've been here the entire time talking about the same shit and, the frustration sets in, there's good days, there's bad days, whatever, it just feels so great. When things start to turn around a little bit. And Tommy B, appreciate that, pal. Really appreciate the super chat, man. So thank you for being here. Yeah, do you agree with that sentiment, Ewok? I mean, it feels so good, like when you've been here for so long. I mean, we have a lot more better to feel hopefully later, but I mean, it does feel good.
Well, yeah, and this being your first true bull market, it's going to probably feel even better for me. Like I said, I've been here before. I've been here 2 other cycles, and seen this part of it. Actually, I missed the very early part of 2017. Is when I started to see it. So I missed that downturn of 16 into that bull market. But that's when I started was the very start of 17. So seeing those ups and downs and kind of knowing what to expect, it's different looking at it through my lens than yours, because this will be your first one to really see how it pays off, right? All the work that we've done in the bear market, to see how it actually plays out in a bull market. So it'll be cool, and I'm excited for you to see that. I'm excited for a lot of our viewers who haven't experienced it yet as well. So yeah. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. And just, I think the more and more lows you experience and the more tough times and everything, like I know you're obviously aware of this, Ewok, but like it makes you able to deal with other bad moments so much more easily because you've seen it be the end of the world 15,000 times. And people say this time is different. And what are you doing? You're an idiot. Like, you've been through all of that. So you kind of just built up a bit of a tolerance to it over time. So that is nice.
For sure.
Let's turn our attention to this. Hey, if you guys are enjoying the stream, do us a favor just to support us, support Real DeFi, bump this stream up on the YouTubes, help out the algorithm, smash the like. We appreciate all of you guys being here. Thanks for the super chats tonight. You guys have been awesome. Let's turn our attention to this. So some new HEX data as well. Just as we've talked about before, we've mentioned in the last couple of weeks with prices going up, HEX stakers are increasing as well, big time. People get back into like, oh, okay, this stuff isn't dead. Maybe I will stake it again. And we're seeing everything from 5,555 stakes, 15 years down to, whatever. I mean, whole ladders and stuff like that. We're seeing huge players come in and do, kind of even Godwell did this recently, but tapering stakes basically out into late 2025, early 2025, mid 2025, maybe even early 2026, just trying to take advantage of like, okay, when this stake, like why not stake out for a year or so, which with the amount of HEX these guys have, that's shitloads of T shares. I just saw one that was like 450 T shares earlier today that somebody did. So, I mean, people are getting crazy yield even for a year-long stake right now because they're whales also. So you have people out here doing that. Why not take advantage of it? And you can kind of see them tipping their hand on what they think is going to happen in this market because they're tapering out those stakes like, when they think the top of the bull market will be. So Ben Sierra, who has a lot of great HEX data, put out some stuff in terms of HEX staking upticks. I'll have you kind of go over it if you would like, Ewok. And I know you had more of a chance to look at this than me and tell me what you find to be intriguing about this, but definitely good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So Ben says we're back, and not just in terms of price. Staking is coming in stronger for HEX than in previous months. It says let's dive into the HEX monthly report, and then it goes into staking. It says over 6,000 new HEX stakes were created in September, returning to the March levels earlier this year. Confidence in EHEX staking has significantly grown, with over 1,000 stakes surpassing March's numbers and approaching the February counts. It says impressive 12 billion HEX was staked, of which 8 billion was PHEX. The other 4, obviously, EHEX, showing growth surpassing the lower figures seen during the summer. There's a lot of information. We'll post his site that you can get this stuff from too. But he made it nice and easy for us. in this post. It says the average staking length remains strong at 1,200 days, which is 3.3 years for new stakes that were made just in September. Average locked up stake. Now, I do believe the average we're at is still 6 or 7 years, but the ones that were made in September were still 3.3 years on average. So I find that's one of the things that I found interesting. So I'll stop there. Knowing that the 4-year cycle is the 4-year cycle and that this bull market usually only lasts a year, this really surprised me to see 3.3-year average of the new stakes that were made in September. So either people are going out very long, and then, because there were 6,000 stakes, remember that, and average at 3.3 years, you have to think some of those played the 1 year maybe to get this time next year to try and capture, the highs. But that just goes to say something for how many longer ones go. And I think has something to do with Crispy, when we had Crispy on not too long ago, and we were talking about the amount of stakes, if you put them out into 2039 at this point, how few it actually takes to become a whale or a shark or whatever it is. So I think that's kind of playing both sides of that and coming into play. But 3.3 years is interesting to me. The average locked up HEX is only slightly decreasing as prices rise and more people stake. That makes total sense. Stay tuned for more coming these days. So his site is, we're going to share this here. Let me see that. Yeah, so it's called hexbase.de. There's a lot of good stuff on here. You can change it from the quarter. You can do monthly. There's staking, penalties, adoption, ratios. So check this out. Ben's got a lot of good information here, as well as Crispy too. So a lot of this stuff, though, like I said, you're seeing some of these levels increase. You can kind of see this play out as this uptrend continues, and we get back to some of these levels that were, it wasn't even March yet, because the PHEX, the EHEX is actually up in August, which is, I find that interesting too. Oh, this is late end staking. Sorry. So these are late end stakes. So there were 1,277 late end stakes in August, which there's people out there not paying attention. Those penalties get thrown back to the ones that fulfill their side of the stakers that do complete them. So don't forget about that as well. Emergency end stakes are it was super high in March when we had that price hike. I think a lot of people decided they were going to get out, and now it's kind of trending way back down. It's very low number of emergency end stakes. What else did I see on here that was new addresses? Yeah, so this is curving as the new addresses are trending back up. You've got a little dip here, and hopefully this continues as well. So green prices, the green candles, the good prices will do that. I find it interesting. It seems somewhat, I don't want to say counterproductive, but when price is going down is really when you want your coins to be locked up. You want to earn while it's coming down. And as it's going back up, I feel like you would want to be more liquid to be able to take advantage of some of these price. Obviously, you're not going to get out fully if you're earning yield like that. But I just find sometimes it's a little backwards to me in my mind. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
What? Just the fact that I agree with what you're saying. You're saying the fact that like staking is upticking because the price is going up, and it should be the other way around. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, but it's markets. It's the same thing as everything. You know what I mean? Like, oh, the price is going up. I'm going to buy some. Oh, the price is going up. That means this thing must be legitimate. I'm going to stake it out. You know what I mean? And it is weird, but it's the same stuff that happened in 2021, 2020, 2021. Is people are like, oh, okay, I'm going to buy HEX at 40 cents and I'm going to stake it out for 10 years. And now all those people are like, God damn, and not all of them, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
it depends on how hasty you were with your decision. I mean, if you're somebody who did kind of like properly do ladders and stuff like that and didn't just punt it all out. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that did like just buy a whole bunch and then punt it out for a really long time and didn't do anything shorter, which I can't help you there. I mean, I think that was just a bad decision kind of from the get-go if you did that. But you are a perfect example, Ewok, because I mean, yes, you were in the very early days of HEX and stuff like that. So I mean, some of these new people that are new more so because of PulseChain and stuff like that and are also aware of HEX and everything will envy you or just be like, yeah, but you got to get, as if you got lucky or whatever. But I understand it. They didn't get a chance to get into that at the beginning, or they weren't aware of it then for whatever reason. And it's not their fault. But you were telling me just the other day, like just how much with this recent pump, like, we're not going to say numbers or anything, but you just looking at the percentage of your portfolio increase because you've had all these stakes earning all this heaps and heaps of HEX when prices have been shit and totally dead. So, mine, like you took a guess at where I was and overestimated because you kind of were probably thinking of like where you were at with, more HEX stakes and stuff like that. And it just shows you, and I've seen it too. I mean, I don't have the HEX bags you do, but I mean, I've seen it too where when you've been accumulating all of it all this time and the price starts to go up, you're like, oh, okay, that's why I'm sitting here with these stakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, if you do that through a whole cycle and you see another cycle go by and it's like, well, damn it, I couldn't take advantage of that and I can't get it out yet or whatever. I do totally get that. But there is something to be said, whether you even want to look at it as just like a small part of your portfolio. If you're not into the staking thing and stuff like that, that's fine. I understand it. But even if you have a portion of your portfolio dedicated to a ladder, and you've got your Pulse bags, your PulseX bags, maybe some liquid HEX, and then like some punted out and stakes or something. I think that's understandable. Yeah. But I think to not want to be allocated to any of that whatsoever is probably a mistake. Enough so that I would want to be part of it,
Yeah.
So,
well, and like I said, I always say, the ladder is the most important part, right? We go back to Richard and his personal desire to make this the best performing asset ever. And I really think he will die trying to make that happen.
I hope he doesn't die, but
if it doesn't, well, you know what I mean, a figure of speech there. I hope he doesn't too. However, he's going to do everything in his power to make this thing go. I really think that, being the creator of it and wanting that and wanting to help so many people, having a ladder is one of the most important things you can do to put some of this out. Yes, there are going to be times where you can't take advantage of it, but your future self may thank you so much for not being able to get rid of it. We see it in Bitcoin all the time where these wallets resurface after how many years? Thankfully, because had they had control of it or known about it or remembered that they even had it, they probably would have sold a long time ago. And you find a wallet with 50 or 100 Bitcoin in it 15 years later, 10 years later, and you're thanking your lucky stars that you didn't cash out, right? So, I that's one of the beauties of the HEX, the staking contract is that I really hate to see people say, well, we were right about this or we were right about that, because you don't know. You really don't know what's going to happen down the road to say that you were right about this or that, or one HEX against the other HEX or anything like that. So, yeah, a staking ladder is super important, even if you can't. So, back to what I said is I feel like they're doing it backwards. Maybe not, because, when you do earn a percentage and you're earning more of it at the same time, it does get quite attractive. So I can see why it's happening.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just that, if you've had the experience with some of those stakes, like we were just saying, and have seen, when the price goes up, all the interest that you've been earning, it is absolutely crazy. Let me just as a, to take us towards the end of the show here, without getting into like a huge weighty topic that I would like to save for later, and to skip the CZ jail thing, because we both said we don't really care about that. It's not that big. I mean, it's cool he's out of jail, but I mean, what is there really to cover, I guess? let me ask you this for somebody that is starting out today, and we can kind of end on this. And we've got a lot of viewers tonight, compared to what we've had, when prices were low, of course. And some of them may be newer to Hex, some of them may be more PulseChain people. I don't know. But for you, as somebody who was around Hex at the beginning, and we can both kind of share like our ideas about it. But if you were somebody that's like, you know what, I've been DCAing, I've been buying Pulse, Hex. I mean, a lot of people are probably FOMOing into Hex right now because it's pumped really hard. What would you just kind of recommend even if they want to take just a small portion of their portfolio and do stakes with it, or just, punt some out or whatever? What do you think? I know you obviously are an advocate of doing a staking ladder, and I think all of us are that are aware of Hex, but what do you think would be kind of just like a simple way to do that? And what kind of, not that you're giving financial advice, but what have you done? I know at the beginning you made some mistakes with it and stuff like that, but what do you think at this point, if you were starting over, like, you just were setting up a little ladder, how would you do it?
Well, yes. In the very beginning, I had some crazy things that, you don't know what's going to happen. So I think there was a whole year and a half where I had stakes coming out every 3 or 5 days.
Yeah, I remember
It was ridiculous.
on
And then
ETH. I mean, maybe
on
the fees
ETH.
weren't. Yeah,
Yes,
obviously.
on
Yeah.
ETH. Now the fees got crazy on some of them because you're putting 5 or 10,000 hex out, back to back to back to back to back, and a lot of them just didn't pan out. So what I ended up doing with several of them some of them were late, some of them I didn't even end. I took the money that it would have cost to end it and bought more hex instead, because the hex was cheaper at that time than it would have been to unstake it. So I did some of that, but I finally got things to where I wanted them, to where now I actually have monthly stakes. For those just starting, I would start with a yearly stake, or even a bi-yearly. You've got to do it in steps, right? You've got to get enough to make it worthwhile. But at the same time, you want to cash in on the T-shares and get as much of an advantage as you can now, because those T-shares are only going to go up. The price of the T-share may not go up, but the actual hex that it takes to get that T-share is only ever increasing. So by staking it out longer first and working your way back is a better method, because you're going to get more in the long run. If you start now by just doing, okay, I'll do 1 year, and then the next thing I'll do 3 years, and then the next one I get, you're missing out on some of those future gains. Whereas if you, at the very least, you don't have to go the 5-5-5-5, because it does cap out at 10 years, right? Those extra 5 years are essentially just a bonus. So if you start even at 10 years, you get the max amount, you get the 3x volume or time bonus out of your T-shares, and then work your way back. Start at 10 years, work your way back, do maybe 8, then 6, then 4, then 2, and then you can kind of every year put in another one to extend it, or fill in gaps or something like that. I think that's the best way to do it. There's really, everybody's got their own strategy. You can have them come out on your birthday or an anniversary or right before Christmas, and it would help, maybe plan some Christmases where, you have it come out on December 1st, where you can give yourself a somewhat of a nice Christmas bonus to help, buy gifts for the family or do whatever. Everybody's got different needs or wants or reasons to do it. So I've heard of people putting them out to, they have younger kids. They put a stake out on their kid's graduation for high school, as a graduation gift to the kid. So there's all kind of different things that you can do with these. And it's pretty crazy to see some of the different methods, but it's all different for everybody. And I think just getting started on your own and starting a ladder, because time's flown, man. We're 5 years into this, and it seems like yesterday. It really does.
Yeah.
That we were in the adoption amplifier and getting these things at rock bottom prices. and it's going to continue to fly. Time flies. So you blink and it's gone. And you may thank yourself later for just punting something out and starting a ladder now that you can always roll later when you get to that point. So, yeah, I mean, there's really no right answer. Only that person knows. But you got to start somewhere. And I recommend people to at least do something small for themselves.
I think the last thing you said is especially true. Like it's up to the individual. I mean, like whatever is going to work for you. That's why I think, if you don't want to bet the whole farm on it, like you got guys like, well, you're not necessarily like this, but I mean, I was gonna say you or like Crispy is all about Hex. Like I don't know what he owns of the other tokens and how much Pulse or PulseX he's bought, but he is like all about Hex, getting more T-shares and all that. More power to him. Some people are like that. And then there's other people who again are coming to this a little bit late. And it would make sense for like, hey, if Hex is a third of your portfolio or something like that, maybe then take a half of that third and do a staking ladder or something. Or, if you are turned off by the idea of a long-term ladder and you have a decent enough bag where this will at least give you something. Now, this is more a strategy for Hex on PulseChain, of course. But you could, punt it out for multi-month stakes or do what we said some of these whales are doing earlier and like punt it out a year from now or just not the whole bag. I wouldn't do that. But like taper it out to different areas where you think the bull market could be ending.
Mhm.
You're not going to get it right. You're not going to get it perfect. I would want to err on the side of being too early, of course,
Yeah.
rather than late. But I mean, that's kind of why you can taper it out at different amounts. I mean, some people cringe at that idea and some are like, hey, this is a long-term thing. What are you doing, idiot? It's really all up to you. But I mean, if you were making a full ladder, I'm with you. I mean, I would just want to I think the best thing to do, and again, maybe I get not wanting to go 15 years. At this point, I understand somebody not wanting to go that far. But I mean, because like you said, beyond 10, it's just the bonus of the extra time locked up.
Yep.
There's not really anything else built in. But I mean, that's still 2 cycles down the road. If you wanted to do 1 through 10 and get yourself a nice amount of T-shares, whatever you feel like that is for you, I think annual is really a great way to go, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, so another thing too that Hexakin Lost in Asia just mentioned, and I forgot about this. Axis was one of the people who had mentioned this method some time ago, and that was buying a big bag as much as you can, and doing a 30 or 60, depending on how much you have, do a 30, 60, 90-day rolling stake. Take the yield from that and punt the yield,
Mm,
and do it again and do it again and take that yield and punt the yield. So you're essentially taking your current hex and making what you can to put out and fill in your ladder that way.
mm,
So yet again, another strategy that could be used if you have enough. Now, in, keep in mind, you know, as PulseChain improves and gets uh, more adopted, we're going to see the price of it probably go up too.
yeah.
It could get to the point where it gets as expensive as Ethereum is now. So we do have to remember that the cost of unstaking, the longer you go, the more expensive it is, right? So
Mhm.
you can't forget about that. But hopefully, like I said, the value of the tokens will outweigh the cost it takes to unstake. So,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up there. Hexakin Lost in Asia. I forgot about that strategy. Like I said, there's videos out there. There's so many different strategies, but that was just another one. So wanted to remind people of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good kind of game theory behind Hex. I mean, that's why Matty Allen always called his show Game Theory Gang and stuff like that. There's a lot of different things that you can do, and yeah, the market seems to start remembering what Hex is about, and hopefully DeFi is making a little bit of a comeback in the consciousness of people. And it's one reason why Richard Hart is long crypto for life. I mean, this isn't like some of these fly by night things and like the Terra Lunas and some of the scammy yield programs that we saw over the last couple of years, despite people trying to throw that label on Richard Hart and Hex all the time. It's actually still here, still working. The price just went down like everything else. But this is one of those products of very few in crypto that looks like it's going to stand the test of time with a guy behind it that has every intention of doing that and is in it for the glory and isn't going to leave. So that's why I think it is very important to be in these products right now, be in PulseChain, HEX, PulseX, all these things right now, just generally in the ecosystem, because he's built one out here to last us for cycle after cycle, I think. So yeah. Lots of reasons.
Long-term delayed gratification. That's always been one of his mantras that, he always preaches. Delay gratification. Teach yourself to wait and you will be rewarded.
Yeah. Just stick it out. I mean, we've talked about it many times. Many people cannot stick things out. Many people with the goals that they have, regardless of what it is in life, most people do give up. Most people do quit because it is not easy. Like most things, if they're worth doing to you and they're compelling and you have like a great view or goal for your life, most people will quit because it is just too difficult to do. You've probably done it, and it's not to say that people quitting certain things isn't okay. I mean, maybe it just ended up not being for you and you're like, you know what, my barometer's changed. Like this isn't really worth it for me anymore. But I mean, like if this is what you really want and you are all in on this, I mean, we're certainly sticking it out and not going anywhere. So give me liberty or give me death, basically. Talking about a lot of death on the show tonight. Yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps us up. This has been a really good stream. I'm glad things are pumping. Appreciate all you guys being here. Thank you, Hexakin Lost in Asia, Wesley Whips chiming in, Chris B, Duke of Booze. Appreciate the super chat earlier. Chris B, Hello Wealth, more Hex. Lots of people that I have never seen before. Digital Money Marcus earlier, you had a nice comment that I never put up. So there you go. I appreciate you, man. Tommy B, Pookie Doo, Arrow Point, so many good people. DJ Moonboy bailing on us tonight. So he apparently is totally done with the stream. We have all these new people here, but he just bails out. He has better things to do. So whatever. Yeah. So thank you all.
So can we answer this question real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I realized it was a question. I thought it was just a comment.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, he said bullish on the buy and burn of PulseX. When will CoinMarketCap rank HEX and Pulse correctly? Is someone suing them over this? Or maybe I heard that somewhere. Yeah, there is an ongoing lawsuit against CoinMarketCap and CZ or Binance, or because they own it. That has been, it was dismissed and then it was reopened because there was more information that had come out. And I think other people complaining of the same thing. So it was reopened. The case is still active, and I haven't heard any status of it, but yes, it is ongoing. So hopefully, if CoinGecko is just as guilty. So if you actually go and look at the market cap on any of those sites of the coins that you're looking at, and you see $7-8 billion or whatever it is, and then you go back to the main page and you see where it should be, well, it's not. And it's the same on many of those sites. Coin Paprika has always been pretty fair. Their data was a little bit off with the volume and some things like that. However, with price and market cap, it was accurate. So they've always been kind of on our side. After Nomics left, it was Coin Paprika, the one that we used for that anyway. But GoPulse has it. There's rankings on there. There's some other ones too. I think look into Pulse has a ranking. So there's quite a few of them out there. So just wanted to mention that. There's two front ends that I saw asking the other day that I wanted to bring up too real quick. Front ends that still work for Ethereum for EHEX that people don't know about and they don't know how to buy it. So I just wanted to hit those real quick. ETHEX.com, ETHEX.com still works as a front end. And Alex made one. It's swap.hedron.pro. Is another one. So there is still liquidity there. There's ways to get it if you want the EHEX. I know a lot of people have moved over to PulseChain, but I did hear somebody say the other day that they had no idea how to get it or how to buy it. So those two front ends still work. So,
yep. There you go, peeps. So still easy ways to buy EHEX. I basically just bridge over to PulseChain and buy EHEX on Pulse and hold it there if I want to hold it liquid too. So that's another option as well.
Yep.
But yeah, well, we appreciate you guys. We will be back next Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with, I'm sure, more bullish stuff and maybe some other spooky things to get into as the Halloween season rolls on. So we will see you then for Crypto Ewok. This has been Broke Boy Crypto right here on the Creed of Crypto Show. See you guys.
See ya.